Welcome back to Women in Leadership. My name is Reagan Jackson, and I'm the Program Director for Young Women Empowered. We are a nonprofit based in Seattle, Washington, and our mission is to cultivate the power of diverse young women to be creative leaders and courageous change makers. The purpose of this series is to highlight some women in our community who are showing us what leadership can look like in the face of adversity. Here with me today is Ijeoma Oluo. Ijeoma is a Seattle-based writer, speaker, and internet yeller. Her work on social issues such as race and gender has been published in The Guardian, The Stranger, Washington Post, Elle Magazine, NBC, and more. Her New York Times bestselling first book, So You Want to Talk About Race, was released January 2018 with Seal Press. Ijeoma has been named one of the most influential people in Seattle by Seattle Magazine, one of the 50 most influential women in Seattle by Seattle Met, and one of the 100 most influential Americans in 2017 and 2018. She was also the recipient of the Feminist Humanist Award in 2018 by the American Humanist Association and the Media Justice Award by the Gender Justice League, and 2018 Aubrey Davis Visionary Leadership Award by Equal Opportunity Institute. And most recently, she's convened an artist fund to support our local artists who have lost income due to COVID-19. Welcome, Ijeoma.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. So how has COVID-19 impacted your life both personally and professionally?
Oh man, I think personally we're all kind of in the same boat of a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, worrying about loved ones. I think as a Black woman too, being particularly worried about the Black community and how hard it's being hit by this. I think we're all in these kind of cycles of like perseverance and grieving, and and I have a family at home. I have two sons, so trying to parent and work and all at the same time. But we are very fortunate in our personal situation in that, you know, um, my partner's an essential worker, but he really only has to go out once a week. We're not right on the front lines, and our financial situation is stable enough to weather this so far. Professionally, it's been a huge change. I primarily work as a speaker and a writer, and so all of my speaking engagements have been canceled for basically the next year. And that's been quite an adjustment for me and for my assistant, who has a family to support as well. So just financially trying to figure out different ways to make ends meet, and then also trying to be creative as a writer in the midst of stress and anxiety. And it's very it's an interesting time, definitely. But right now, professionally, we're mostly just focused on helping other artists weather this storm, artists who don't have the savings or the resources that we're lucky enough to have to get through this.
Yeah, well, tell us a bit more about this artist fund. How many folks have applied so far, and is there a way for other people to contribute?
Absolutely. So if we started this fund the first week of March, because most of my work events are really, really large, I start getting cancellations before a lot of other people, just because, you're going to cancel a 3,000, 10,000 person, 20,000 person conference before you're going to cancel, like before bars started closing. And
Yeah.
when I realized that I had already lost the next 2 to 3 months of speaking engagements, I knew it was going to come for everyone in the creative sphere. And my partner was talking about a friend of his who had just had a lot of DJ gigs canceled and was worried about how they were going to make it. And so we just said, wow, this is really going to hit our community. It's going to hit the Seattle arts community so hard. It was really clear that it was going to get to the point where there were no events being held. And it was also really clear that events are probably going to be the last thing to come back. So that sector of business is going to be the longest hit as well. And so we just started saying, I wonder if we could get the Seattle community to come out to support artists. So we worked over the weekend, put together a GoFundMe and a really simple application, and opened up. And that first week we got $100,000 in donations. And then Langston joined us and became a fiscal sponsor to really help us get money as quickly as possible out to artists. And they've been just amazing in that capacity as well, working, full time pretty much on this project. And so far, we've been able to help over 900 artists with emergency funding. And we've been able to send out over $500,000 to artists in the Seattle area. No strings attached, very low barrier to, as far as application. And with focus to make sure that we are doing enough outreach and that we are accessible to artists of color, queer artists, trans artists, and disabled artists.
That's really fantastic and really impressive.
Thank you.
So I mean, I feel like that's one answer to this question, but I'm curious too, like, are there other priorities you think we should have in terms of our advocacy work, in terms of taking care of our communities in this time?
Absolutely. I mean, I think our advocacy work needs to run on two different levels. We have immediate emergency situations that need to be addressed, right? So that's like what our artist fund is doing, right? Our artist fund is not even enough money to be able to get someone through this crisis. It's enough money to make sure that maybe for this month you can buy groceries or, bridge that gap in your rent. Um, so that has to happen because those needs don't wait. But on the other level, we have to look structurally at what we need to do. And so when we look at vulnerable communities, marginalized communities who have been disproportionately impacted, we need to look at really how we're structuring our society. How are we structuring wages? How are we structuring sick time? In the arts, we're asking, what do you owe as a venue, as an organizer, for events that are canceled? What do you owe these artists who've already invested? When we look at the financial devastation for artists who put, $10,000 of their own money prepping for South by Southwest or for Comic-Con, and they don't get any of that back. It's just gone. And what is owed to people who make money off of that effort, when these events can't work? What sort of savings, what sort of emergency fund can we build structurally so that we're not depending on donations every time this happens? The truth is most of the people giving to our fund are people who should be applying themselves. We only have about 4 larger donors in that $500,000. The vast majority is people giving $10, $20. We have thousands of people donate to this fund. That is heartwarming in a sense of community, but it's also really alarming in a sense of our infrastructure and our systems, because our systems should be stepping up and working to help vulnerable populations in this. So I would say, look at both, right? Look at what you can do to help your neighbor. Look at what you can do to help your family. Reach out, whether it's just checking on someone, someone who's alone through this, see if they're okay. But then also start asking your representatives, what are we going to do to make sure that, the next time there is any sort of emergency, that it's not the same populations again and again and again who are really devastated by this. And those are conversations we need to have around labor, around the role of government. We need to have around foundations and trusts, and whether or not they should be able to sit on all of this kind of tax exempt money through hard times and not give it, which is their stated purpose for these funds. It's really important for us to start looking on both levels, systemically and emergency wise. So, we all have little bits we can do, even if we don't feel very empowered right now. We have the power of conversation. We have the power of our vote. We have the power of sharing information. And then we have the power of reaching out to people and elevating other people's voices. It's really important right now that we hear from people in Black and Native communities, that we hear from people in disabled communities, so that what is happening to them isn't pushed to the side while we focus on, the heartland of America or middle America and how it's going to be impacted. We all have some power that we can do to really help both systemically and personally in this crisis.
Do you self-identify as a leader, and how do you feel like your leadership has been shaped by this experience?
You know, I wouldn't say I necessarily identify as, I've always liked to identify more as a conscience.
Mm.
Um, I knew that I would not be the person. I think there are different levels of leadership. There are different ways you can lead. I think that we can all lead by example, and we should all strive to. But I think as far as the people who have to make the really, really tough decisions, who have to make a lot of tough compromises to get things done, I know that's not my role. And that role has value. My role has always been to push and push and push and raise ideas. And I think we can have leadership in ideas, we can have leadership in action. Um, but I guess sometimes I do find myself in leadership roles. And I'm not averse to calling myself a leader. I think I think of leadership in various ways, you know? And I would say what I have been aware of, because I'm naturally an introverted person, um, is I am someone who takes responsibility very seriously.
Mm.
And regardless of whether I'm an introverted person or not, regardless of the fact that I would rather spend all of my time kind of away from people, away from any sort of spotlight. I am aware of the privilege of my position, and I am aware of the responsibility of my position and the resources that I have. So no matter what I personally want to be doing, I have, if I put something out in social media, I can immediately reach about 400,000 people. To not use that to help people in times of crisis is a dereliction of my responsibility. That platform doesn't just disperse to other people. I think that we can find ourselves at times to leadership, and other times not. Other times where it's like, oh, this is time to push other people forward. I think the question is are we listening to our conscience? Are we listening and respecting our privilege and using it for good? Are we stepping up when the time happens? I think we all will have times with which we are called to be leaders and times when we're not. And I think that being a responsible person means being able to tell the difference between the two.
I love that. Is there anything else that you would like to, is there a message that you have for our young folks who are a part of Young Women Empowered and who are at home and trying to sort out what they can contribute during this moment?
Absolutely. I would say that this is a time where we need creativity and imagination more than anything. Um, if you're a young person, I think it's important to recognize how incredibly strained the older people in your life are. And, we still have work or worrying about the work that we used to have. We have all of these obligations. And what that does is it's taking up a huge portion of our brain power. And we're already older. We're already kind of set in our ways a little bit more. Even me, as someone who views themselves as a creative person, is set in my ways in a way in which young people are not. This is a time we've never faced before, and it needs creativity and imagination more than ever. It needs people who say, why not? Why can't we try this new thing? And I see that space for young people. And I hope that young people recognize there's value in that they can really lead the way, especially in where we're all talking to each other online. We're all trying to find new ways to connect and new ways to support each other. But you can really lead the way. And your experience and your knowledge is valuable. And don't let anyone tell you it's not, because all of the traditional ways that my generation and older is used to doing, to working, to connecting, to helping, it's all been kind of tossed out the window. And we're trying to figure it out, but we aren't as pliable, we aren't as open. And I really hope that, young people will have confidence in their knowledge and their skill set, and that we will be able to listen and utilize some of the things that young people are trying out there. So just keep experimenting, keep trying things, whether it's in your creative work, in your political work, in your activism work, even just how you're talking to your friends. Share how you're connecting with your friends and talking with your community. It all really matters, and it's all going to help get us through this.
Perfect. Thank you so much for being with us today. Is there, how can folks contribute to the Artist Fund?
Oh, if you go to Langston, langston.org/SARF, and you'll hit the landing page, and it has all the different ways that you can contribute to the fund.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank